The crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across mahogany walls lined with portraits of senators and CEOs. This was my father's world, a realm of political fundraisers, whispered deals, and carefully curated impressions. Standing in my Air Force dress blues at the back of the ballroom, I felt like an intruder at my own family's gathering. The fabric of my uniform felt foreign against my skin, not because it didn't fit, but because it represented everything my family had spent years trying to ignore. Every ribbon, every insignia told a story they'd never bothered to read. My father, David Sharma, worked the room with practiced ease. His laugh boomed across conversations about stock portfolios and campaign contributions. When his eyes briefly met mine, I saw the familiar flicker of disappointment, the same look he'd given me for the past decade. A polite nod, nothing more, before he turned back to more important guests. "Don't worry about her," came a voice from my left. My cousin Leo was speaking to my Aunt Patricia, his tone dripping with condescension. "She's just a medic. All that military stuff is so blue collar." The words hit me like shrapnel. Just a medic. I watched my father's face as he heard Leo's comment. For a moment, I thought he might defend me. Instead, he offered a weak smile that felt like a knife twisting in my chest. His silence was louder than any insult. This wasn't new. This was the culmination of years of being treated like the family's embarrassing secret, the daughter who'd chosen duty over dollars, service over status. I remembered my brother Ethan's law school graduation party like it was yesterday. Our backyard had been transformed into something from a magazine: white tents, string quartet, champagne flowing like water. My father's speech had been filled with pride I'd never heard directed at me, praising Ethan's prestigious path and limitless future. The grand finale was a gleaming BMW wrapped in a ridiculous red bow. "A man of your stature needs to look the part," my father had announced to thunderous applause. I'd watched from the sidelines, thinking about the $20 bills I'd saved for months just to buy textbooks, the second-hand laptop I'd worked 2 jobs to afford. Every money's tight and maybe next year, they'd ever said to me rendered meaningless by the cost of his ego. My own big announcement years earlier had been met with horror. At 19, sitting at our kitchen table, I'd told my parents I wasn't going to the state university they'd pre-selected. Instead, I was enlisting in the Air Force with the goal of making it through pararescue training. "But Anna, why?" my mother had stammered, her hand fluttering to her throat. "It's so dangerous. It's beneath our family." My father had been more direct. "Don't be ridiculous. Why would you throw your brilliant mind away just to be a grunt?" A grunt. The word was a verdict on my worth. They'd assigned me the role of the strong one in their family narrative. It sounded like a compliment, but it was really a cage, a convenient label that absolved them of any parental duty. While Ethan was the sensitive genius who needed constant support, I was supposedly so fiercely independent that I didn't need anything from them. I wasn't independent, I was alone. The final proof had come 2 years ago, after an incredibly demanding tour. I'd been promoted to technical sergeant, a significant achievement that had taken years of relentless work. I'd called them, excited, inviting them to the promotion ceremony. "We'll certainly try to be there, honey," my father had said noncommittally. The day before the ceremony, my mother called. "I'm so sorry, Anna, but we can't make it. Ethan was passed over for partner at his firm and he's an absolute wreck. We're flying out to be with him tonight. He really needs us right now." His wounded ego over a corporate title was an emergency requiring a cross-country flight. My promotion, a symbol of survival and success in one of the world's most dangerous jobs, was an optional appointment they could cancel. Now, standing in this ballroom, listening to Leo dismiss me as just a medic, I was about to walk away, to disappear back into the shadows where they were most comfortable with me being. Then the room shifted. A hush fell as the main doors opened. Secret Service agents swept in first, followed by the guest of honor, the President of the United States. My father practically vibrated with excitement, positioning himself for the perfect photo opportunity. But the President's eyes scanned past the senators, the CEOs, and my starstruck father. His gaze swept the room until it landed on me, standing alone at the back. His voice cut through the silence, clear and direct. "Is that her? Is that Major Anna Sharma?" Every head in the room turned. The silence was absolute. I watched Leo's jaw literally drop, his smug expression wiped clean. My aunt looked pale with shock, but my eyes were locked on my father. He stood frozen, his hands still outstretched for a handshake that would never come, his face a perfect mask of utter, uncomprehending disbelief. In that moment, I saw his entire carefully constructed universe shatter, the grunt he'd written off, the embarrassing phase that never ended, the daughter whose achievements were footnotes in his golden son's story, Suddenly she was the one the President of the United States knew by name. After the President moved on, leaving a wake of stunned silence, a man in a crisp suit appeared at my side. He introduced himself as a senior aide, his voice low and respectful. Major Sharma, the President didn't mean to put you on the spot. He was told you were here and wanted to thank you personally for your actions during Operation Nightfall. My blood ran cold. It was a mission so classified that even the memory felt heavy. The aide continued. Your leadership as the lead medic on that joint ops mission directly resulted in the rescue of a critical intelligence asset. Your courage under fire was exemplary. For that reason, the President would like to formally award you the Distinguished Service Cross at a private White House ceremony next week. The Distinguished Service Cross, second only to the Medal of Honor. In that moment, a plan crystallized in my mind, not born of revenge, but of ice-cold clarity. Sir, that's an incredible honor, I said, my voice steady. I would be humbled to accept. I paused. Would it be possible for my family to attend? They've supported me so much throughout my career. The lie tasted like ash, but it was necessary. The aide nodded. Of course, Major, we'd be happy to accommodate them. A week later, we were led into a room in the West Wing that felt older than the country itself. Dark wood paneling, portraits of stern-faced historical figures, the air heavy with the scent of lemon polish and power. My family huddled together, suddenly looking small and out of place. They were treating this like an exclusive tour they'd secured through my father's connections. Incredible, isn't it? My father whispered, as if he were responsible for the architecture. To think little Anna brought us here. My brother Ethan couldn't resist one final jab. Well, Annie, I have to admit, your little hobby certainly has its perks. Glad it finally got you a White House tour. I stood in my perfectly pressed uniform, a calm island in their sea of anxiety, and waited. The door opened, and the President walked in. The shift was immediate and absolute. Nervous chatter stopped. My family snapped to attention, faces mixing awe and panic. He bypassed them without a glance and walked directly to me, gripping my shoulder warmly. Major Sharma, thank you for coming. I've been wanting to do this for a long time. He turned to my family. I wanted you all here because it's important that you understand the caliber of woman you have in your family. Then he told the story. He spoke of Operation Nightfall, of a helicopter crash in mountains so remote they had no name. He detailed how, with multiple fractures and shrapnel in my own leg, I dragged a wounded intelligence asset to cover, established a defensible perimeter, and performed life-saving surgery with nothing but a field kit and a flashlight held between my teeth. He described how I'd held off insurgents for 6 hours while coordinating air support from a damaged radio, all while keeping our asset alive. Your daughter is not just a soldier, he said, his voice ringing with authority. She is a brilliant strategist, a leader, and an American hero. She is, without exaggeration, among the finest we have. I watched their faces crumble in slow motion. Leo went from smug to sickly pale, finally understanding what just a medic actually meant. My mother's hands flew to her mouth, tears no longer about my safety but about her own profound shame. My brother's charismatic smirk dissolved into slack-jawed emptiness, his 6-figure salary, his corner office, his BMW all turned to dust in the face of real courage. And my father stood there, ashen and defeated by a level of importance he could never buy, orchestrate, or inherit. The President unpinned the Distinguished Service Cross from its velvet box and stepped forward. As he fastened it to my uniform, the weight of the medal was nothing compared to the weight of the silence in the room. Major, he said softly, is there anything you'd like to say? I turned to my family, let my eyes drift over each of their broken expressions, then looked at my father and held his gaze. I was just doing my job, sir. The simplicity was devastating. Their world had been dismantled, their narrative erased, and all they could do was stand in the ruins. In that ringing silence, I didn't feel anger or victory. I felt free. The ride back was the longest hour of my life. Finally, my mother broke the suffocating silence. Anya, we're so proud of you. We never knew. My father chimed in with a hollow incredible, absolutely incredible. They were offering me words I'd once desperately craved, but now they sounded foreign. They weren't apologies, they were desperate attempts to repair their shattered self-image. I said nothing, just watched city lights streak past the window, feeling profound emptiness where a lifetime of resentment used to be. A few days later, my mother called, her voice artificially cheerful. After small talk, she got to the point. We should have a proper party for you to celebrate your award. I understood. It wasn't a celebration for me, it was a PR event for them, a way to recast themselves as proud, supportive parents. No, thank you, Mom. I said calmly. I don't need a party. Before she could argue, I said words I'd never been able to say before. I have to go now. I'll talk to you later. And I hung up. It was the first brick in a wall I should have built years ago. A year later, everything looked different. The anger was gone, replaced by quiet peace. I'd transitioned to instructor at the pararescue school, the very place that had forged me. Now I was responsible for turning young airmen into elite combat medics. The respect I earned here wasn't from shock or presidential decree. It was earned daily on training fields, in wind tunnels, in muddy obstacle course pits. It was real. One afternoon, a young airman was struggling on the ropes course, arms shaking, ready to quit. I climbed up beside him. Forget about the top, I told him quietly. Just focus on the next handhold. That's all that matters. When he finally hauled himself over, the exhausted, triumphant look on his face was worth more than any medal. My real family now was the team of instructors I worked with, men and women who shared my scars and dark humor. Our celebrations were backyard barbecues with cheap beer and loud music. We didn't talk about status or promotions. We talked about missions that changed us and comrades we missed. Sitting around a fire pit with them one Saturday, listening to ridiculous stories, I found myself laughing, a deep, genuine laugh from my soul. I realized I was finally home. Belonging wasn't something assigned at birth, it was something you built. A few months ago, my phone buzzed with a message from my father. It was a picture. He'd had my Distinguished Service Cross professionally mounted in an ornate shadow box and hung it in his office next to Ethan's law degree. The text read, "The centerpiece of my collection. Everyone who visits is so impressed." I stared at the photo for a long time. No anger remained, not even a flicker, only quiet, sad pity. He still didn't get it. He never would. He'd taken my truth, my pain, my triumph, and turned it into a shiny object to impress friends. I deleted the message and, with it, the last ghost of my old life. He'd hung my medal on his wall, but my worth was never his to display. I spent years waiting for my family to see me, to acknowledge my value, but the truth is, my worth was never theirs to give. It was mine all along, earned in mud, forged under fire, and finally claimed for myself. Sometimes the people who should see your worth first are the last to recognize it, but that's their loss, not your limitation. Your value doesn't depend on their vision, friends. What do you think of this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Would you like more stories? Don't forget to subscribe Revenge Radar and hit the bell button so you don't miss any videos. See you in next video.